This is actually, I honestly, I don't know about the 6-year-old, because the 6-year-old is a little too young to appreciate what I think I'm doing now in terms of, and it's nothing to do with the work or acting. I think what I'm really enjoying about this stage of life is that I'm doing things like hobbies. Like I'm just like doing stuff that are like things I didn't have access to when I was a kid. I grew up in a small town, and I started taking tennis lessons a few years ago. I started taking archery. I started taking pool lessons, and guys, coaching me pool. I started, just doing interesting things that I wish I had learned when I was a kid, because it just gives you something to do to round out your life in terms of. And I try to tell my kids this. My kids have access to a lot of stuff, and I got a piano in the house, and I had a piano growing up, and I didn't learn to play it. Right? I'm like, well, that was dumb. Should learn to play the piano, learn to play an instrument. I did a play years later on off Broadway. I had to learn to play the guitar for the character. But had I learned to play the guitar prior, it would have been much more easier for me to sort of pick up that thing. So now, just that part of my life, I really enjoy. Yeah, the 6-year-old me would really love to be, like, hey, you're doing stuff, man, you're TV and film, and TV. It's just great to be something to open to the theater, have people turn on their television, can watch anything. It's really nice, and I wish my dad could have seen most of that, but he passed away a long time ago. But that 6-year-old version would have been really happy with the way things have turned out so far.
How do you feel growing up in a small town has shaped you as a person? What was it like making kind of the big move into Hollywood from there?
It is essential, I think, to making people. Well, I'll take that back. I would say I wish just growing up in a small town was enough to make you a good human being, but that's not really how it works. But I think it did allow me to be to dream big, because when you're in a small town, you're cut off. You sort of only see things through television and magazines, and you read books. When I was growing up, it was encyclopedia. I'm going to encyclopedia, and I would look, at A, and then I would look all this stuff up, and then Alexander the Great was in there, and I'd look at the Roman Empire, the Greek, and then I'd go over here and I'd read this part. And so that was my internet, like the encyclopedia. I think growing up in a small town does make you have to learn how to use your imagination. And I try to do it with my kids too, because if you're having technology the way we have technology and have so much stuff, it really does stifle your creative process, and it makes you sort of just dead. It deadens your senses to the world. It's not great for kids to be indoors, to looking at their computer, looking at their iPad. And so I stayed outside a lot. I would go outside and play by myself for a very long time. I had a little BMX dirt bike, and I would go outside, and I could be out there for hours. And I remember I would watch a movie, and then I'd go outside and I sort of like try to create that, whatever I was watching. So I remember watching Smoking the Bandit. This was like a movie that was like my thing back in the days, Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason, and I think Sally Field, and I would watch that, and then I'd go out and try to recreate the opening sequence of the Smoking the Bandit, where the camera's inside of I guess the 18-wheeler or something, because he's hiding from the cops, right? Hiding from the sheriff, and he would drive up into things. So what happens is he'd come out. Okay, talking about this. He'd come out, and basically you would see that car, that Trans Am, jump out of the 18-wheeler, and that would be, you would see that land on the freeway, and he'd turn. It just was a cool scene. It had the music soundtrack. So then I went outside and I have a BMX, and I put the ramps up in the cinder blocks. So now I get down the dirt road. I lived on a dirt road, and I would get all that speed, and I would go hit those ramps and try to jump over the cinder blocks, and then just as far as I could. I mean, I hurt myself many times doing different things like that. And it's funny, my kid just like kind of has a small fracture, so she has a cast on her arm. And my kids have broken things maybe 2 or 3 times now. And I go, I think they're building kids differently, because I never broke anything. I think they're making kids differently now. I think there's something definitely in the food or nutrition. Because I was on the phone with my mom last night, and I think we were talking about it. I said, I don't know if I didn't break anything because my bones are more durable, or I was lucky, or whether I was afraid because if I broke something, you would hurt me. You would now then be mad enough to then break something else. I mean, because we couldn't afford broken bones. I was like, broken bones. I mean, so it's a fun childhood in a small town. Really, I don't regret that at all.
I'm curious, in recreating these moments from movies you were watching, did you ever get a camcorder and try to recreate them on camera, or?
No camcorders, oh no God. You're speaking, that's money. I didn't have a camcorder. I didn't see a camcorder until one of my sister's boyfriends, was her husband, I can't remember. he had a camcorder, and it was a big camcorder. Camcorders looked like a movie camera. It wasn't like a small one. It was like a tripod. You needed a big camera. It had I think it had the VHS. I mean, you popped the VHS in and closed it. That was a whole thing. And then that was great. You watched it back. I never had a camcorder. That was not something that I had access to. But if I did, yeah, I definitely would have had a smaller version, and I probably would have been making home movies. I mean, there's no question about it. That would have been something great.
I love that. Now we're going to turn things over to the fans. There's a couple questions down here. There's a microphone right here. Step on up.
All right. Really love the body of your work.
Thanks, man.
And I have two quick questions. The first question is the Luke Cage character. I read that comic in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of hard for me to read it because I think the writers wanted him to be a certain way. How much input did you have on that character when you developed it for today?
Input, I think sometimes you find the right writer, or you find the person that has the right perspective on it. I think with the Luke Cage comic book, what we had going for us is that we had sort of a blank slate, because even though the comic book had been established, we weren't going to try to do that because it was just a different time. You know, it's blaxploitation time. It came out of that time. It served a purpose. It fit the voice of the people that were of that era, and it made sense. I just think that as a culture, we had sort of moved differently. It changed the way we saw the world and what we wanted to sort of say as a statement. So I thought, at least, you know, Chael Hadari Coker, who was the showrunner and writer for the show, he was profoundly invested in the ritual or the writings of people that spoke to the culture, spoke to the black culture. You know, whether it's James Baldwin or whoever. We wanted to sort of pay attention to those people, because Tanisha Coates or whatever. We needed to sort of speak to a people in the culture of Harlem. Harlem is so profoundly historical. Harlem in itself, the name Harlem is a Dutch word. Dutch were colonizers, and it sort of settled in New York, and so those names have meaning. And then you look at the people that were in Harlem back in the 20s, and we talk about like all this history, steeped in rich history. It didn't make any sense to try to be blaxploitation or jive butt turkey. We weren't really trying to do that. We wanted to make them a little more reflective, more well-read, and more thoughtful, because having strength, I think what people confuse with having strength is toxic masculinity, and masculinity isn't toxic only unless you behave in such a way that creates that. When you're strong, you really do allow yourself to provide for others and also protect them, so then they can enjoy things. That's really what that power comes from. So the power of protecting your neighborhood, the power of trying to speak to the youth, the power of trying to guide them to the next level or chapter in their life, so they can have something to tell, the stories to tell their kids. That's really what it is about leadership, but it's not about enforcing your power, because when you have power, you never really want to abuse it. Yeah. And I think we wanted to sort of speak to that, speak softly, carry a big stick, you know what they say? So we were on the same page there.
Yeah. And the last question, you played so many different characters, so many different vast, from Priest to Luke Cage. At this point in your career, would you consider a reality show like Survivor or Traitors?
Whoa. Never thought about that. Survivors, or what was your other one?
Traitors.
Traitors. I don't know that one. Well, I tell you, I watch the show called Naked and Afraid sometimes. It's a little guilty pleasure of mine. And the way the world is going right now, I think everybody needs to get a little more familiar with survival skills. We have, I hate to say it, we got climate change happening. People are losing homes from floods and fires and all this other stuff. We have issues where you may have to figure out how to live off the land. They're not setting us up for success here. I think we got to learn to clean your water. You got to learn to learn to forage, learn to eat mushrooms. I'm looking at that show thinking, I gotta get good at some of this stuff. I'm not kidding you. So I'll be on Naked and Afraid. We all might be on Naked and Afraid. So get yourself together. All right?
I have a follow-up question about Luke Cage for you. I feel like that's the character that you will most likely always be known for, like the one that every sizzle reel will have clips from that. What does that mean to you, that is your legacy? Because that character means so much to so many people.
It's for me. It's interesting because I thought about I was working for a little bit before Luke Cage. I mean, when I got Luke Cage, I was probably in my late 30s, and then I sort of thought to myself, like, this is an interesting character, but as an actor, I'm always thinking about the character and thinking about like, okay, what is this? What is the character? And then I'm like, okay, the next character. So I have a different perspective in my head. So at first, my idea about Luke Cage, I know Luke Cage is a big, larger-than-life character. So when you play something like that, you're going to have that always be a part of your filmography. People will always associate with that character. I look at it now, it's definitely it's not been a bad thing at all. I have enjoyed all of the, I guess, the exposure from it. I've enjoyed the influences it's had on people. I bump into people sometimes now, and it's a funny thing because that show came out in 2016, so what are we at, so almost, that's 9 years when it premiered. I bumped into people who are, they're young adults, and I see guys, and I have to put it in my head, and I go, I shake their hand, and they go, hey man, and they're just watching Luke Cage, because they were too young maybe to watch it then. And so now I'm looking at he's in his early 20s, and I go, oh, this is very interesting, that now he's watching something, or actually, he was in his teens when he watched it. So it was a very specific time in his life when he was very impressionable. So you just think about that, and that's sort of, because I've had those moments. I've had moments where I've met people that are heroes of mine, or people that have a large influence in my life. And I get a little goosebumps. I get a little feel sometimes. I'm like, oh man, this is interesting. I mean, like I was doing a panel with Vincent D'Onofrio, a couple months ago, and I tell Vincent, I've been like, I've known Vincent for a while now. I worked on I was first coming as an actor, as a guest star on Criminal Intent when he was, on that show. I've watched Vincent since I was, young, watching, Full Metal Jacket. So I'm a big fan, right? Men in Black, all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, he's a colleague, but I'm like, oh, it's just Vincent D'Onofrio. So I get it too. Sometimes I get that little thing where it's like, oh, this is crazy, this is interesting. So I understand where it is, and I have perspective now to understand how lucky I was and how enjoyable the experience was. It's a great place. It's a great thing to have within the realm of a career,
Have you had a chance to watch I guess it's the first 3 episodes of Born Again yet?
Well, no, I think I will. I try to wait. I'm going to wait until it's gotten a few, like maybe 5 or so, or whatever it is, because I feel like I'm not a binger, but I do want to have control of how much I consume. So I kind of may want to have like a few more to sort of look at,
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Next question right here.
I love the show Evil, and I was just wondering, the cast seems to have such a great chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any funny story or memorable story that you have from off screen with the cast on Evil?
So many. I mean, we had as much fun off screen as we had on screen. It probably had more fun off screen. It's like I talk to people about that. It's hard, especially when you do a TV show. I mean, you can have connections with people and enjoy them, and it becomes like family. You spend more time with them than you spend with your family sometimes. You're on set like 10, 12 hours a day, right? 6 months, 5-6 months of the year. That's a lot of time hanging out, connecting with people. It's like, imagine your family, right? You have a family, some people have kids, they have a wife. Imagine sitting in your house and all of you working together within the house for 10 hours. Like, that's crazy. But imagine or not even work together, you're just in the house. You don't leave. You don't go to work, your husband doesn't go to work, nobody goes to work, kids are in there. I don't know what you're doing, but you're just in the house. That kind of time, and maybe you go to your room for a bit, but nobody's going anywhere. So we spend a lot of time together, and you get to know people really well, and you get to know like the shorthand, there's humor, there's a ritual, there's routines, there's what are we eating for lunch today, where are we going for lunch, where are we filming, what location are we on, it's just a lot. And you do that for a while, it becomes really, like I said, family, right? The stories, I can't think of so many specific stories that I'm trying to figure out a good one to share that's not terrible. It's like, oh, which story? We would always, I would say, the girls. We had the girls who, when we started that show Evil, the youngest one was 9. And I got a 9-year-old daughter now. She was 9, right? So when we wrapped the show, she was like 15 or 16, right? So that was the youngest one of the show. So watching her, or 14, we watched her kind of grow up. 9 to 14 is a different person. And the other one was like 19 or 20. So then these are different kids. And so you watch them grow up and see them. So they come on set and they would start these little games, these little patty cake games, like these little hand games, right? So then we would get the games, and we would start the games too, and before you know it, like, we're learning games from them. So now this is how we pass the time in between sets, in between takes and stuff. We do stuff, we play practical jokes on one another. We like to bother each other because in between takes, it's like, it's just fun. It's just fun to mess with people. And we do, as they say, take the piss out of each other because we don't take each other that seriously. It's a fun group of people to be around, and Asif and Kurt Fuller and Andrea Martin, Conti. We just had a great time. I can't stress how important it is to have that kind of feeling on a set, because it's hard to come by. It's really hard. Most people do not really find that to be the case. They are on set, they're working. It is a job. We do enjoy what we do, but you don't necessarily have camaraderie all the time with actors. Some actors they shoot, they go to their dressing room, and that's it. You don't see them until it's time to shoot again. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be best friends, but sometimes you just get along so well, you enjoy each other's company, you don't really want to not be around each other. So that's very helpful.
Thank you.
That's a great question. I have a follow-up about evil. I spoke with the Kings at New York Comic Con, and I think we all still kind of hold out hope that maybe somewhere down the line we'll get more evil in some form or fashion. Kind of, where's your hope level on that coming back somewhere or continuing that story?
What's the song that I got? High hopes we got. Yeah, I know. I really do. It's been a year since we wrapped that four and a half, fifth season, whatever. I still have hopes for it. Look, Luke Cage is still trying to bring Daredevil. So, and this is, like I said, this is a long time ago. I'm in this game. I get it. We got, every time I do something, it's like, oh, when is this going to come back? When are we doing? I don't think about it anymore. I think there's always time. I just don't. I wanted it to happen like sooner than later. But I don't think it's impossible for something to come back in the next year or two. We got time, we got things. If the Kings want to write it, which they do, we can figure it out.
I want to see you on Elspeth too, because I know you've been on their other two shows, The Good Wife and The Good Fight.
Good Wife, Good Fight, yeah.
What do we need to do to get you on Elspeth?
You know what? I think it's funny. Elspeth, they did have Emerson on Elspeth, but Emerson's married to Carrie, so that was fun, interesting. I don't know. It's interesting. They shot Elspeth literally around the corner from us. I went on the set and hung out with the guys, and Wendell and those guys. I'm a big fan of Wendell Pierce and Carrie, yeah. So it's possible. They come up with something interesting because their world, I feel like they use the actors so often. I don't know what I've been Lamont Bishop on it. I don't know how when I show up, what do they think? Is this David or is it Lamont? It has to be a character that is so different. You know what I mean? Because those worlds aren't the same. It could be Lamont Bishop. I could come back as him. I could come back. He's still around.
There's a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Got another question right here.
Hi. Yes. Is there anything from the sets that you've been on that maybe has made its way to your house?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. I got the chair that David. There's more. I've taken other stuff before, but a lot of clothes for sure. But I give clothes away too. I'm not a clothes hoarder. I do believe that we have enough clothes on the planet to basically clothe everyone. We should stop buying clothes, guys. We should start recycling and start doing little, pre-owned, clothes, going back to thrift stores and stuff, because we're just making clothes, and I don't know what we're doing with them. They're on landfills. It's insane. Any clothing that you've never worn is kind of new clothing to you, right? So I'm like, we should do clothing swaps. Like, you find people with this is your sizes, this is what I'm looking for. You just go, like a swap meet, you go, hey, I like that jacket, I'll give you this, and you give me this, and because we're just wasting stuff. I get clothes now, I got clothes I don't wear. I give my brother gives, I give my nephew, you know what I mean? So I take clothing, and then I try to pass it around, and I try to use stuff, and then, but then I took the chair that David Acosta had in his room in the church. Such a nice chair. That chair is so nice. Such a nice chair. Every time I sit in that chair, it's just like, it's got a little tilt to it. It's swivel. It's got wheels, but it's leather. It's got a great frame. It's very comfortable. It's great. I love that chair.
Thank you, Father.
That's a good question. Do you have another question here? Right here.
Hi, I have a question about the show Evil. So there's been, in the show, but then also I think in the world, there's a lot of debate and even I think some research into it when we talk about religion and faith and spirituality and mental health and psychosis. And so I didn't know if you had any sort of input or insight on what your thoughts on that are.
repeat that one more time. It was a very good question, but I kind of got lost in the beauty of it.
So thinking about psychosis,
Mhm.
right, and mental health issues,
Yeah.
and hallucinations and all
Yeah.
those things, and then looking at religion and spirituality,
Mhm.
right, and seeing God and divinity
Yeah,
and those
yeah.
kinds of things. There's a lot of debate in the world and, within the show, and then there's also some research as well about, is spirituality and religion, is that psychosis, is that mental health, those kinds of things. And so I didn't know what you think about that.
Oh, it's a tough one because, I mean, I'm a very logical person, but I also leave room for so much that I can't explain. There's so much more that you in this world, we know a lot less than we know. I mean, the amount of information that we don't know is, if we start approaching things that way, we would be better off. We humble ourselves. There's just too many people in the world that will tell you they know everything. And the quicker person will tell you that they know everything, you gotta walk away. Anybody who sounds like they know everything and does not leave room for debate, without any experience or research in that area, you gotta stop talking to people, because people will lead you down a dark path of stupidity. And for me, I tell people all the time, I'm always thinking, oh, you think you're always right, or often I am right. But I'm only speaking about things that I actually know about. That's the problem. They go, why do you think you're always right? And then they're mad when I am right. But I usually don't say anything about things I don't know about. I only speak about things I know about. So when you ask me this question, I don't know enough to answer that question. I'm just going to give you a theory, right? So let's say, like, for instance, psychosis. I got friends that I know who have done ayahuasca. They've done that thing, right? They go and there has been some real movement, some real results from those kinds of things. And I remember doing a voiceover years ago for something. I think it was National Geographic, and it was about the use of LSD to cure, or acid to cure addiction to nicotine, smoking, which some people have a real strong addiction to things like that. I mean, it's the level of addiction to smoking is rivals that of heroin, and also they were able to free them from heroin addiction. But that's not something you can use in the United States. That was something that they had to go abroad to use. And not to endorse drug use, but this was under scientific oversight, in a place where that's what they do. There's Asian medicine, Western medicine versus Eastern medicine. We're living in a place where unless they can make money off of it, you can forget about it, right? There's so much information out there, and there's so many things that we can explore with respect to the mental health, that if we put more time into that, obviously it would be very useful, but no one cares, unfortunately. And unless you take it upon yourself to do your own self-work, I mean, the fact that we have no medical system, that we have health insurance, so you can't talk to anyone because you can't afford to talk to them. The price of having a conversation with someone who's in the field of medicine, in terms of medicine or therapy, that to me is insane. If I was an expert in any way in that kind of shape, I would hate to have to only see patients that could afford me. I mean, there's just something weird about being able to help people and not helping them because they can't afford you, and that's just the condition of our society. But it's not like that everywhere. And so I think if you look at, some people are born with it's something in the brain, right? So there's things that you could do. A lot of times it's natural things you can do. A lot of times it's just stress. Like, everybody doesn't respond to stress the same way. In our society, we all cope. We all are coping with stress, and how we cope with it is different. Some people are not built to cope with stress. We all have it. Some people respond differently to lack of sleep, fatigue, a poor diet, stress of having to work 2-3 jobs. I don't know how, if you look at America, I mean, if you just take that alone, if you just take the person who's working 2 or 3 jobs, I've been there, because I was a blue collar guy, I grew up with no money. If you have to work 60 hours a week, yeah, you might do that until you're like 30. At some point, 60 hours is not something you can do. And so you don't have time to sleep, you don't have time to recover, you don't have time to decompress, and at some point you're just a boiling cake. And then you add that to the fact that we can all get firearms, and then what? We're just in a bad situation, and I don't think it's rocket science Because people can just be happy if they don't have to stress about where the next meal's coming from, how they're going to keep their power on, how they're going to pay their electric bill, how they're going to pay for the mortgage, how they're going to pay for the insurance, how they're going to do this, how they're going to take care of the medical bills for their kids, how they're going to deal with all that stuff. And then all the stuff we're talking about, and you got cancer, you add that to it because, you know, there's so many things that we are all dealing with that could be avoided if we're not in the circumstances that we're in. So we are creating problems to then try to solve those problems with medicine or with whatever, spirituality or praying or, you know, meditation. All those things are great, but we could do a lot less of that if we had a circumstances that we all could, you know, could just live, you know?
Exactly. Great. So my husband's a therapist, and I run an addictions and recovery rehab.
Mhm.
And so we have a lot of that conversation back and forth, right? If people had their basic needs met,
Yeah.
what a different world it would be.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a great question, and a hard one to have a segue to, but in talking about paranormal stuff, I saw an upcoming film of yours, The Casket Girls.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that. What can you tease about that? I love history and that entire kind of story.
You know, I can't tease much about it. I haven't seen any of it. I just talked to another friend, Sean. He was in this movie. He's also at this event, and he said it turned out pretty well. The producers are happy, but producers always say that. They always say they're happy. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen any of it, so I can't speak to it really.
Is it a historical piece?
Well, it's
part?
It's vampires. You know, and that's all. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Excellent. Next question.
So, back to evil, and it was kind of going off what the previous girl said, but was the writers of the show intending, are the monsters real, or is it an influence of media or genetics, or?
You know, I think it's a blend of, like, for instance, I think if you watch the show and you think to yourself, all right, if you really just look at people, I always thought that people were much more frightening than the creatures that we saw. Creatures were sort of looked at as a bit of a humor, a bit of comic relief, to not be taken so seriously. They were often saying funny stuff. Their dialogue was funny. The things they did was very humorous. You know, I think when you look to that, we were sort of really focusing on the fact that humans can be much more evil than the creatures. And I really find people sometimes, and the older I get, and I think it's always been this way, but I've started to dial into this now, is that I don't really, a person can look a certain way, but I'm really just trying to figure out what their character and their soul is like. Because a person can be so ugly in the inside, and it's really, it does everything. It speaks to everything, you know what I mean? There's something about the sinisterness of the evil in people that sometimes can't be seen until they open their mouth, or sometimes the things they do. And so I thought that we were always dealing with that kind of evil, and predominantly that is what you have to be able to identify. You know, like, we're at a space and time right now where they're trying desperately to create the narrative that empathy is bad. That's what they're trying desperately. They're trying to attach empathy to, or the lack of, empathy to weakness, and the lack of empathy to strength, you know, masculinity. Like, if you can just turn off the idea that I don't really care what happens to this person next to me, then somehow you're a stronger person for that. And that is a very dangerous thing that they're trying to do, because basically they're probably dead inside. You know, like, you can't be a good person if you're trying to turn off the feeling that you have for people when there's something wrong with them. So I think as an artist, that's all artists are, and sometimes for that, it's to a fault, because, you know, people as an artist are, you know, whether it's acting, dancing, singing, musicians, there's a personality usually that comes without being an artist, because we feel so much, we observe so much. The human condition is what we are trying to reflect in all of our work. But we have to see the human condition, and that means it's in its highest form and it's great, or when it's in its lowest form in terms of, you know, poverty-stricken, health. We see all of that. That's all we do. We're like sponges, and it's sometimes exhausting to watch. And then when you meet people who have zero ability to concern themselves with other people, it's very difficult to watch. So, Jesus Christ, I forgot what you asked.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out if there was something common between where you guys were all watching or listening or drinking. So those alcoholic drinks, you guys were always drinking. I'm like, there has to be something in that.
Something in it.
Yeah.
No, we were, well, there was sometimes something in it. But I always thought Evil was a blend or some sort of blend between reality and yeah, like, because remember there's one episode we went to see my father, I think an episode called Two Fathers in the first season. It was like a psilocybin, like we were on, we were tripping a little bit, so we were out there and then she saw this, this baby was born in a cornfield or something like that. The baby was there, and then I saw, did that even happen?
Was that real?
Was that real? And then there were times where you'd see people and one person would see a demon, another person would see a person. Maybe I would see a demon or Sister Andrew would see a demon based off of our ability to see a person.
What was the influence on that bit?
I think the influence is like they were playing off of a lot of things. The Kings are very good at taking stuff that they've read and trying to implement that to the shows and playing with this idea of what the church is and what demons are in terms of, because Robert King is very Catholic and he really enjoyed telling that story and I think his wife would be probably considered agnostic, so I think she didn't practice. So there were two people battling and putting in stuff that one was based in faith and one was based in science. So we were constantly trying to serve two worlds, but never really bringing closure and a finality to it, so you wouldn't feel like you weren't represented. But also we didn't completely tell you one way to think or the other.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question?
Yeah, so I really liked the blend of the scientific versus the religion and how the different views were. And that's really what drew me in as a viewer. What was it that drew you into wanting that role of Father Acosta?
It was pretty simple. I finished Luke Cage and wrapped, and then it was like a few months or something like that. And I just like changing it up. I mean, as an actor, I don't want to be bored with myself. And if I don't bore myself, then hopefully no one else is bored. But if I'm bored, then it does affect how I am, how I'm able to work. So I just try to find something that makes me feel like I'm being challenged, so I can give it 100%. And because I've been in this business a long time, I've seen people who just come in and clock in. They're just clocking in. They're just phone it in, clocking in. And to their defense, they're probably playing the same role again and again and again, and doing movies, the same characters, different background, different costume. It's the same character over and over. Nothing wrong with that. Making a lot of money, whatever, right? I'm trying to avoid being a person like that, and I'm just, whatever my career does is what it does. But when I have a say in it, and when I have an idea and I can sort of follow through, then I try to find the project, or the role that is different than what I was doing before, and maybe something I don't quite understand because I don't have any connection to it. I was like, oh, wait a minute, Black priest? No, I've never even seen a Black priest. I was like, oh, Catholicism. I don't know anything about Catholicism, really. I mean, this is interesting. Okay, the Kings, I love working with them. And it just made sense for me at the time. It just really made sense. It was just like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This should try this. And it, to my credit, I will say, a lot of people who my team, a lot of people are like, oh, because once you do like a superhero or a Marvel character or something like that, action, it's like, oh, you can just keep doing certain things. Like, oh, this is going this direction. Like, you can do this action, you can do this kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, beating people up or shooting something or being shot at. I don't know, I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna try to do something maybe a little different. And I was like, I don't have to be shot at, I don't have to shoot anybody, I don't have to beat anybody up per se, but I can do so much with this role. It could be really interesting and maybe create a new genre, a little different genre, different fan base. I'm always like, hey, I just want to sort of spread my wings a little bit and see what else is out there. This was sort of a little risky in terms of like that, but I think it found an audience, and hopefully people will continue to find it down the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up Catholic, so I thought you really portrayed like that role well, because it is an ever-evolving religion.
Yeah.
That I felt like, it made sense. Your role made a lot of sense in that area, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Next up.
The writing and themes in Evil and the dialogue I thought was so clever and witty. Did you have any opportunity to give any input on that or generate any of those ideas?
We used to, I think the first 2 seasons we had like these chit chats with the writers room. We would have writers room. We would do a conference, and we would just sort of, I guess, spitball in terms of like things that we thought were relevant storylines or maybe relevant events in the world that we thought were like interesting that maybe could be put into our storylines or something like that in a vaguest sense, like, oh, we saw this and this and that. Some people would use that time to talk about maybe their own life, and sort of that way they could connect the dots between their character and something they experienced in their life. I always try to keep as much as I could about myself out of it because I wanted to just do something different. So I kind of just always was like, oh, this is interesting, but it wasn't anything necessarily about myself. Dialogue-wise, in television, for the most part, when you have great writers, you do not change the dialogue. Not because you don't want to, but if you really look at the dialogue and you really think about it, you really just give it a moment, the dialogue works. You just have to find, as an actor, that's one of our challenges. We have to figure out how to make that work. With the Kings, I feel like I always hear, there's something about the way they write that works for me, and it just feels almost like effortless, not effortless, but I don't have a hard time trying to make it work. It just fits. I don't know. It just works for me. And so I never really tinkered with them. I think maybe like 5 to 10 times over 5 years, I might have texted Robert or Michelle, can I change a word in this sentence? Can I change that? Literally, or can I just flip the sentence? Or can I not say that sentence and take this out? Because I feel it was so seldom that I would ask to change anything because I felt like it was always working. And that's to their credit. They absorb and then they go off and they create something and then we come back and we get it. And there was a few times where I fought and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I think I didn't do it. And then I look back and I go, oh, they were right. I should have done it this way. So I try to do that with writers I really like.
That's a good question. Thank you. Next up.
Hello.
Hey, how are
My
you?
question is a little more off topic than some of the other questions have been. So sitting here listening to you talk, you just seem very passionate about a lot of topics. So my question is, if you had to give a 20-minute presentation with no preparation on any topic, what would you do?
Ooh. I would probably give, it would be, gosh, I could go anywhere probably, 'cause I got a bunch of random stuff I could talk about. Gosh, I'd probably go with something about, I think how to, feminism. I think there's something about feminism. I think I was just talking to somebody this morning about it, and why I say feminism, because it's like, well, feminism, you're a man, what are you talking about feminism for? I think, and not to pander to women, because I think every time a man tries to say anything about feminism or speak on behalf of women, they're like, man, this dude's just pandering. He just wants to be close to women. He wants women to like him. Not really. I got daughters, right? So, and I think everyone has a woman in their life. They got daughters, they got moms, they got sisters, they got somebody in their life that's a woman. And I think to myself, I go, there's this whole thing right now. Everybody's trying to change and go back to this idea that, less women or less conversation or less power. I don't know what they're doing is crazy. Less ability to make decisions. I don't know what's happening, right? But what I think to myself is that we are, as men, I would talk to people about the ability to be masculine, but also to be respectful. There's nothing wrong with being a man. Being a man. I'm a man. I'm like, manly stuff. There's so many things, manly stuff. But being vulgar or trying to impress women. I was a kid. I was a young boy where I was in my 20s. I look at women and I'm like, oh, you sometimes I think when you're young, you don't respect her, so you get verbal. You get verbal, like women, you just don't understand how to control yourself, right? So I think I'd speak to young men about the ability to be masculine and to have a certain way about yourself that doesn't, take away from you, diminish you as a man. Also makes you more attractive. I think people don't understand that. Like women are attracted to that kind of stuff. And I'm not speaking for women, all women, because some women actually maybe are. But I think there's something that men can do on behalf of feminism by speaking to young men to guide them so then they don't have to grow up to be problems for women. And I think if we do that, that's going to serve everybody. I think it's going to be helpful. And I also was talking to my friend, I said, I think what happens is people say they care about a cause. And this can be something that, as I got a bunch of friends a lot of different places. If you care about something and you think that it's something you can help with, if you're in a better position to help, if you're in a better position to help than the person who is actually, having the problem, like, okay, feminism. Well, feminism, when they have these marches and they have these things, actually the men got to show up at these things. I hate to say it sounds really crazy, well, it's not my problem, or it's not my cause. I think that's the problem. That's the problem. Every time we have a problem, the only people that are showing up are the people that it's affecting, the victims. And the people that are not showing up are actually causing the problem. So if the men who actually understand that the problem is them, not specifically the people are showing up, because those people who wouldn't show up, right? if you're the problem, you're not gonna show up. But if you're not the problem, and you can speak on behalf of the people that are being victimized, it's much more powerful to show up. Just like in the 60s when they were making movements about civil rights and everything else. It's like all these celebrities, man, like Marlon Brando and Paul Newman stuff, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier. Everybody who cared, Jane Fonda, they were showing up because that people paid more attention. If everybody who's got a problem with feminism is going to be women, everyone's going to go, oh, this is a bunch of women is talking, is just complaining.
It's an honor to be up here today. I want to say that probably the reason why you didn't break any bones when you were a kid is because you're Power Man, Luke Cage.
Oh yeah, I was like, yeah, it's like Clark Kent. I didn't know.
Exactly.
That makes total sense, man.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I follow you on Instagram. I know where you're coming from. And I really appreciate your philosophy and your background. That said, if you could do one thing, pray as your priest David for evil to come back. Okay, and then the second thing is, can you tell me about Luke Cage? Is there any possibility that he's going to be on Disney Plus? Because I mean, Daredevil's back, So those two things, if you can pray for those and get those on TV, I think we'd really appreciate it.
Well, listen. This is a funny thing they say. I'll say it only for black people. I'm not sure.
Oh, black. It's okay.
No, listen. I'm not sure this applies to anyone, but you ever hear someone say, "Hey," someone says, "I'll pray for you"?
Yes.
You heard that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, that was the prayer.
Yeah.
That was the prayer. When people say that, they go, "I'll pray for you."
Yeah.
That was literally the prayer. They just prayed. That was the prayer. That was the extent of the prayer. The prayer was, "I'll be praying for you." They're not literally going to go pray for you. They just said they're going to pray for you. That was the prayer just now. I hope it worked, because that was it. They didn't really go down on their knees. They did not go put 5 minutes and get to spitting tongues and hallelujahs and glories and running around. They didn't get their Bible out. They didn't find a scripture. They didn't meditate. They didn't talk to God. They didn't do any of those things.
That's right.
But they said they're going to pray for you. So you asked me to pray. I'm going to actually pray for you.
All right.
I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to actually pray for you. How's that? All right.
I have one last question for you. I loved Plane. I thought that was a fantastic action movie you and Gerard Butler were in.
Yeah, that was fun.
And there's supposed to be a sequel, right? Ship.
Sure, yeah.
What's the status on that? Have you started filming it?
Well, the status on that, okay, so it's really a thing that, it happened during the strike. They were supposed to be following through on that. There's things going on, obviously. Gerard and his company that produced, they own the rights to it. So that's a question for them in terms of moving it forward, because I got things going on. I'm sure he's got things going on. He shoots stuff. So I'd love to do the sequel, but it's kind of in their ballpark.
So another thing to pray for?
Another thing to pray for.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you. Are you here tomorrow as well?
I am here tomorrow.
Excellent. So if you didn't get to ask a question, come up to his booth.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you.